Hey everybody, this is Jason Ward from MakingStarWars.net. Not sure if you guys could even hear me or not because this is my first time trying to set this stuff up. Just kind of did it on a whim. Figured I'm bored. Let's see what the internet's doing. I don't think anybody will even see this as I'm not tweeting it out or any of that jazz. But I figured, hey, why not? I've been really pretty excited about Indiana Jones in the last, what has it been, like a week and a half or so? I was hearing that it was gonna be filming, and I wasn't, like, following it super close. I wasn't, like, diving in and, messaging sources and texting people and trying to get information. But I had been told, "Hey, that's gonna start filming pretty soon, so you should look into it." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I will." But, I didn't, and, all of a sudden, it's like, "Oh, it's filming on Monday," or something like that. And so I was pretty excited. They're making a new Indiana Jones movie. And as excited as I get about Star Wars, we've had how many Star Wars movies now? We've had like 5 or 6, and the television shows and all that. So having Indy back has just been, I'm elated to say the least. It's really fun to see Harrison Ford back as Indy. That makes me super happy. Hey, there's people in the chat here. How's it going, guys? That said, I could understand how some people have reservations, like Harrison Ford's 80 years old. But man, I look at that guy and I still think he could kick my ass. Like he looks like a grizzled, pretty tough dude. I wouldn't want to fight him. I'd probably run. So that said, I'm going to talk about spoilers that are like general spoilers. I think these spoilers will be in the trailer for Indiana Jones based on what's out there and how kind of open they've been. Even though the director, Mangold, kind of made it sound like the pictures were being taken from the bushes. But that stuff isn't super under lock. So I don't think these are huge secrets. But Harrison Ford has these dots on his face. And those dots are definitely tracking markers to most likely de-age him. I mean, you have pretty much two options. Ford was like, I don't want to wear makeup anymore. I won't do a movie if I have to wear makeup. So that could be the case. That's ridiculous. Occam's razor tells us, yeah, they're gonna de-age him. So the question we have then is Indy gonna be young for the whole film? A part of me is like, that would be rad. Like a movie set after Last Crusade, I'm in. Like I want that. But there was this tweet from Mangold a while ago where he was talking about the Velvet Underground. And well before my time, and if you've never listened to the Velvet Underground, I suggest you get some headphones and take the self-titled album. I think it's the most accessible, and just listen to the whole thing. It might be hard at first. Sometimes like alternative music isn't super accessible, but it's New York in the 60s, and it's great. Velvet Underground is just fantastic. I think most of you guys who've grown up in the Spotify era have just everything at your fingertips, and you just consume all kinds of music. So, but if you haven't, check it out. And man, I keep hoping that if that's accurate, we're going to see Indiana Jones in New York in the 1960s on some kind of adventure. So if I was a betting man, I would say the opening is going to be Indy in some World War II era adventure, and then we skip ahead 20 years, how we always do. That like in Last Crusade, the hat goes down, the hat goes up, and then it's old Indy or middle-aged Indy. There's too many Indy eras now. But Harrison Ford in 1989. And so today, I think we're going to go Harrison Ford in 1989 to Harrison Ford to today. But it's hard to say because, I mean, who knows how many movies Mangold's working on. He's a Hollywood director. Sometimes they could have 3 or 4 films and they could speak broadly, and it might not mean anything for Indy. But what do you guys think? Would you guys be excited if it was? Do you guys want it all to be young Indy, or do you guys want those two timelines? I'm pretty open as long as the story's good. But I was really, really jazzed about Toby Jones. Toby Jones, man, he's just one of those actors that you see in everything. I mean, most of us probably remember him from Captain America, I'd say at this point, as a Hydra scientist of some kind. And but he's done so many good things. I think he played Truman Capote at one point too, which kind of makes me go back to that 1960s kind of New York vibe that Mangold was going for. So maybe that's related. Can't get Philip Seymour Hoffman, as he unfortunately isn't with us anymore. But I just really, really, really hope that this indie movie, if it is the last Harrison Ford one, I just hope it encapsulates everything good about all of the previous four. Because people on the internet.com, they'll all fight about what's the best one. And a friend of mine was busting my balls because I said Raiders is objectively the best film. And I think it is, like, hands down. Like, when I say objectively, I mean, like, if we became literary scientists and looked at the structure and the pacing, and I just think all of those check boxes, you'd have a lot of check marks for Raiders of the Lost Ark. But man, I'm a Last Crusade kid. That was my favorite one. That's the one that, like, when I'm sick, I'm actually sick right now, but not with COVID, thankfully, just a cold. But when I'm sick, I'll put on Last Crusade and just watch that. It's lighthearted adventure and it's like super fun. It just kind of encapsulates what's good about indie without having to be too heavy. Now, Raiders of the Lost Ark, though, if I had to pick what would every movie mirror closer, it would be Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's the Whale of Souls of the whole franchise. So with that said, I don't think you get James Mangold and then make a Crystal Skull. So, like, when you have people complaining about Crystal Skull, it's like, I get if it didn't work for you. Like, if it didn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. But why would you go, oh God, Crystal Skull, that's a James Mangold movie? Like, it's not. That's a Steven Spielberg, George Lucas issue, really. And I do love Crystal Skull, though. I'm not trying to play all sides here. I mean, if I had to be, like, really critical on all of them, it's hard to be critical on Raiders, honestly. But if I had to be critical on Temple of Doom, which I also love, it's just that it's so dark all the time. I think it's actually, like, the closest to Treasure of Sierra Madre, which is a movie you should watch if you love indie and you haven't seen. It's on HBO Max. It's black and white, but it's beautifully remastered or mastered. I don't know. I saw it on VHS as a kid. It looked like crap compared to what's on HBO Max right now. And but it's just a great movie. But Raiders is the kind of the closest. Like, it took the most from it, but Temple of Doom feels the most like it, in the sense that, like, Humphrey Bogart's just kind of a piece of shit in that movie. Like you kind of love him, you kind of want to be him because he's kind of a badass. But then, there's this part in Sierra Madre where this little kid comes up to him and he's like, "Hey, mister, like, want to buy a lottery ticket?" And he's like, "No, shut up or I'll throw this water in your face." The kid stands there for a second. He just throws water in the kid's face. And it's so fucked up, but it's hilarious at the same time. Like, I can't help but laugh every single time that I watch that movie. It's terrible. But, that is more of the Temple of Doom indie. And that movie takes place before Raiders. So you could kind of see how that works and what they were thinking creatively. And Last Crusade, like I said, that's my favorite one. That's the best one in my opinion. But at the same time, Marcus Brody and Sala, they became almost sitcom characters. They became the R2 and 3PO comic relief. But when you watch Raiders and you skip Temple of Doom and you go right to Last Crusade, you're like, what the hell is going on with these guys? Like, this doesn't compute. This doesn't make sense. And so with that in mind, like, I still love it. I still find the gags mostly really funny in that one. And then here's my hot take that everybody will probably hate me for, but Crystal Skull's problems isn't aliens. I think if you come from like a Judeo-Christian background, Aliens seems like it's jumping the gun, jumping the shark, like it's some different thing than the Bible. But if you are, let's just say, an atheist, there's not a big difference between cosmic religions and Judeo-Christianity, and or even Sankara stones. So with that in mind, if we're gonna just kind of play a little bit of an open mind here on that stuff, the problem for me with that final or last indie film was actually Karen Allen. I know, hot take. I was happy to see her back, and I didn't even have a problem with her when the movie came out because I was just so happy to see her back. Like I saw the movie with like rose tinted glasses. Now that was what, 2008. After all of these years of watching that movie all the time, just having it on in the background and watching it when I watch them all, I get a little bit like, I feel like they didn't really direct her. I feel like they threw her in the movie as the comic relief, but there wasn't really much, there wasn't anything funny for her to do. And like, there's this part that is just so immersion. It's not the monkeys for me, believe it or not. The CGI monkeys, I don't like it. It doesn't ruin the movie for me, Mutt swinging on the vines. That's pretty what the movie should be. That's the course, right? But there's this part where she's supposed to be driving that like land and sea vehicle. I don't know what you call it, but she just is like steering the steering wheel left and right like she's a kid on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride and it's on tracks. And it's like I tried to justify it in my mind. I'm like, is this like making fun of the B grade nature of it, And no, I don't think so. I just think it was just kind of something delightful to them that didn't really work for me. So like the first hour of that film, I love, and then when you get to the waterfall scene where they fall over the waterfall like 4 times, pretty hilarious, but really not faster and more intense there, Lucas. I don't know why you let that gag go on there with Spielberg. I have to think they thought it was hilarious, and I thought it was funny when it first came out to some extent, but it slams the brakes on the movie. It's just like, it's kind of a car movie. It's kind of like Force Awakens, when Force Awakens is really good though, and it's just like rocking in terms of tempo. But that one just like stops the tempo and then tries to restart it for the last act. And that's not what you want to happen in an Indiana Jones movie, because as we know, the payoff in indie movies is usually Indy's morality and not like him beating up Nazis. It's Russians or whatever it happens to be. So with that in mind, I think Mangold is going to bring an Indiana Jones movie that everyone's going to say is great or fine by default because it's not Last Crusade, Oh wow, I kind of started ignoring the chat. Yeah, good to see everybody in here. What? Okay, let me see how this works. Okay, so wow, this is pretty easy. Dale Erdman says the Bible had stuff about aliens, astronomy, etc., but it was removed by power, kings and people that wanted to remove certain things for a narrative. Yeah, see, I'm no like historian on that stuff. I'm no Bible scholar, obviously, but with that in mind, that kind of seems to fit in with the theme of the Indiana Jones movies, doesn't it? Where you have the ark just being placed into this warehouse in the end with all the aliens and everything, And but what is funny to me is all of the criticisms about aliens. And here we are in 2021, and the government's kind of going, "Hey, UFOs are real. They're not saying they're aliens. Who knows what they are?" Like, I'm absolutely fascinated by the topic. To be honest, like as a kid, there used to be this show called Sightings on Fox. Used to scare the shit out of me, and it was just like all of the stuff that we love in paranormal movies today. All of the Conjuring people, the original people, they were on it, I think, and it would just have stuff about aliens and abductions and all that. And I love that show, and I was so afraid. There was this movie called Intruders that came out on, I think I want to say ABC, probably. It was like a mini series. I was so afraid of being abducted by aliens after I saw it because the little black-eyed dude showed up and were taking people and probing them and all kinds of stuff. It freaked me out as a kid. but it became one of those questions, like, in Donnie Darko, when he's talking about God, he's just like, I don't question it anymore because I can't get the answer. Like, he just kind of gets frustrated and says, I quit. That's how I felt about UFOs. I was like, all of this shit could be real. It might not be real. It does. Who knows? But with the games that if the government is playing or not playing, we just can't figure it out. And then now that they've said UFOs are real, I'm like, whoa, that's crazy, man. That's crazy. I've been on a kick right now of watching like conspiracy theory stuff, and I don't really dig the conspiracy theory stuff too much, to be honest with you. But like the Majestic 12 and all that, it's kind of trippy. It's kind of fun to analyze it, and it's also kind of fun to look at it through the lens of somebody who's been involved with I'd say, I don't know what you call it, a schizophrenic Star Wars fandom for the last few years, because you can see exactly like how those little cancers are there, and who really messes up stuff, and how people are just so willing to believe something for entertainment or because they want to believe, that it just kind of muddles up the whole thing. And that's where we are kind of with the Indiana Jones movie, and with the next wave of Star Wars stuff is, what's gonna happen, who's telling the truth. Oh, just really quickly on like a complete side note, um, Star Wars Instagram Bespin Bulletin ran a cool little story the other day, and that was that Duncan Powell's coming back as Melchi. And if you don't know who Melchi is, he's just one of the rebels who breaks Jyn Erso out of that prison camp in Rogue One. And he's in the end battle, and he does die in that movie, but he's coming back for the Andor Star Wars Andor series. So I like that. I like that kind of stuff. And there's another rumor that which I think is actually pretty substantiated at this point, that Saw Gerrera is coming back, that Forrest Whitaker is coming back to that show. And I kind of think that there's a good chance that all of that stuff in the Cassian show is gonna kind of almost be the most Indiana Jones Star Wars show we'll probably ever get, until we get what's her name? I'm drawing a blank on it. Afra, the Afra show. I mean, that's clearly like the most Indiana Jones derivative Star Wars property yet. But I kind of think that Indy has that overlap and that Venn diagram of being like a spy and all that stuff. And so, anyways, to go back to it, Melchi is he's one of the rebels who decides, I'm gonna go with Jyn on this suicide mission. This is more important. And he's gonna be in the Cassian show. And the one thing that I think is important is a lot of people go, oh, we know that he dies. We know Cassian dies. Who cares? And it's like, I just don't think these serialized shows really matter, that if you know that they die. Like when you watch Indiana Jones, do you really think he's going to die ever? I mean, he might die in this final one. They said at one point he wouldn't, but that was before Mangle came on. But I just don't think it really matters. I think I can enjoy the Star Wars prequels knowing how it ends up. It's kind of the point in that way. So I think that this show, though, from what I'm hearing, is going to introduce some new characters that are supposed to be pretty rad as well. And there's a lot of Cassian's going to lose a lot. Like, he's going to lose family and stuff like that in the series. But his sister is supposedly one of the roles that was cast for it. So I have to think that we're going to get a whole new character, in her. And there's going to be a lot of new characters coming into the series that will likely live on in the rebellion. Because every time they make one of these shows, it's an opportunity for a new character. Everyone thought the Clone Wars was going to be the stupidest show ever. People just really dumped on it, like back in 2008-ish, like around Crystal Skull time. People were just really hard on it. And now those same people are completely excited about Ahsoka having her own TV show. And I'm not saying that we should throw it in their face or anything like that. It just, you just have to be more open-minded. And that's what's important about this next indie film too, is you've got to be open-minded. Like, let's see what they do. If what they do is an abomination, then by all means, rag on it, get it out, and then move on. Don't make it your personality to hate something. I think that's the most important kind of lesson of the last few years in all of this stuff, is that a lot of people are just really down to make their personality about hating stuff. And like, that's just not fun, because it means that you have to crash somebody else's party. And you don't want to be the guy who everyone's, or the girl or the person who everyone's just like, hey, I don't want to invite them. They're just such a downer. They suck. And there's a lot of that on this youtube.com, if I may say so myself. But yeah, I agree, to go back to the indie stuff with Chandler here. The alien stuff can be done right in 2021. And I think so too. One of the rumors for the indie film, sorry, I'm like all over the place. I didn't really prepare. I just set the stuff up and just started going. So we'll just see what happens. But the alien stuff, yeah, there's a rumor that the second half of the film is about the space race in some way. So that makes me think that, that it's going to probably involve German scientists from the first part of the movie who are then brought over. So what does that mean? What does that entail? And in my article on MakingStarWars.net, I put up a couple of ideas of what the MacGuffin can be in those articles, like in the Toby Jones article. One of the things that was suggested to me, that it's a really, really, like, hold on, I can't remember what it's called right now. The shot in the dark. Oh yeah, how do you say this? This is one of those words that I read a lot but never have said. Antikythera mechanism. I don't know how you say it, but basically it's this old time machine, I think, from ancient Greece, a bunch of gears and stuff like that. And I'd love to see something like that brought in there, but not a big fan of time travel necessarily. But if you look in Toby Jones's hand, he has what looks like a mechanism, and but to me almost looks like it's like a clock. So I'm not sure if it's just some comedic moment where he's just taking like a clock off of the mantle, like, this was my grandfather's and it's important to me, as they flee the castle, kind of thing. Because they're filming at this castle out there that they keep lighting on fire and burning up. There's a bridge out there with a bunch of barbed wire on it. There's a sequence with young Indy where he's riding a motorcycle. They had a stuntman who had a mask on, like a Harrison Ford mask, which, by the way, I completely love that they're doing that now. Because if anything really like gets me down, shouldn't say it gets me down, but like, if I watched Terminator 2 today, I showed when Terminator came into Fortnite a few months ago. I play Fortnite with my kids, and they put the T800 in there. So my kids were like, I want to see this. I want to see this movie. I'm like, I own it. Let's do it. So that's one of the good things about Fortnite, is it's been a way to get into movies that the kids haven't seen yet. But we put that on, and we were watching Terminator 1. They loved it. They wanted to watch part 2, put part 2 on. When you get to part 2, every time it's John Connor, it's like a lady riding a motorcycle. and when we were kids, or back then, I think we took in images so much slower than we can today. Today, our minds are so much faster. We just look at screens all day. We're just so quick at it. So it kind of takes me out of the movie when you just see somebody else. Same thing with Back to the Future Part 2. You see Doc pull in and he hits the trash cans, right before the roads, where we don't need no roads kind of moment. And it's just like some weird guy with like a crazy white hair, like a little white fro, just kind of freaking out in front of Marty McFly. And it makes me laugh when I see it. That one doesn't really ruin it too much for me, but the Terminator one, for whatever reason, just distracts me. So they got this cool mask. It looks like Harrison Ford, and it's pretty convincing, I think, from a distance. So I think it's going to look great. But yeah, so I don't know, man. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how people get over the idea that they know the ending already. I don't know, like, if this Indy 5 might take place before Indy 4. If it doesn't go that far into the 60s, or depending on, I think the Indiana Jones 4 was 1957. So if it takes place before 1957 on the second half, then we don't meet Mutt. We don't have any of that stuff. And remember that Temple of Doom takes place before Raiders. If you're to watch them in order, you start with Temple of Doom, or even the Young Indie series if you're a super fan like me and don't mind ABC style shows from the early 90s. There was a lot of good stuff in that show, but it's almost impossible to get somebody who's like not an uber indie fan to like sit through a lot of it. And what that series, the Young Indie series, that has the most insane CGI test I've ever seen in my whole entire life. Like, it is bananas. And I get that they had to try it. I respect George Lucas for trying it. But the little boy who plays Indy at around age 8 to 10, I'd say, kind of a little Jake Lloydie from Phantom Menace, honestly. But they would film, some of that, some of him as an 8-year-old, some of him as a 17-year-old, kind of back and forth. And then they would edit them together into a movie, a little indie movie. And when they went to go and film they wrote some interlocking scenes to make the whole movies work. They had to get the kid back, but the kid had I think probably had hit puberty or was about to, way taller than he was. So they actually shrunk him down, and it just looks bizarre. It's just kind of freaky looking. Not because if he just looked like he was a short person, you'd just be like, okay, he's a short person. But he looks like himself in the same costume, but he looks all bloated because, the kid's probably put on a good, 5 pounds, 10 pounds, and his face has gotten like more masculine, less boy-like. It's weird looking, just super strange. And, but, yeah, I think that's how you spell Melchi from memory. I think that's correct. But so yeah, Melchi though, he's one of those dudes who he has a couple of lines in Rogue One, and I would say he was one of the standout rebels on the ground. And I think it's cool that we're gonna get more of him because I think it's one of those kind of world building moments for Star Wars where now after we watch this Cassian Andor series and then we watch Rogue One again, we're like, oh, there's Melchi. Like, it's going to add more depth to it, and it's going to make that moment where all the rebels show up and help Jin, which works fine onto itself, but it's going to make it more special, as you see these emerging characters and who have now been built up a little bit more. And it's like, just to go back to that theme of knowing the end of something, it's like if you know the end, I think you're probably like one of those people who's really afraid of spoilers, heavily, and just you operate on a different wavelength than me because I just don't understand it. When it comes to Star Wars and Indiana Jones movies, I'm gonna watch them over and over again. When it's something like WandaVision, that was probably the last non-Star Wars thing I really enjoyed. I didn't want to hear any spoilers from it. I knew people who worked on it who were down to tell me things, and I was just like, I don't really care. At first, I didn't care, and then I saw the first episode, and then I really was like, whoa, I want to know. And I'm like, nah, it's just so much more fun on this one, just to take, because I'm never going to probably watch it again. Just it's not really that much of my thing. Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and Back to the Future, and then music. That's where I spend my time. But my rewatch stuff is on Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Back to the Future. And so those not that I hope they never make another Back to the Future, for the record. But I don't really think that it matters if I know little details about Star Wars, even the structure. As I've always said on the podcast, I always just really, really loved taking it all apart over the year leading up to it. It's about the journey, man. You know what I mean? Not the destination. I just like that whole kind of year-long celebration, getting to there, and then having something expanded for me. And so yeah. And Dave, he says maybe the opening scene is just a flashback, and I think you're completely correct. I think it's the prologue of the film, and then it will probably be 1960s after that. They're probably, if I'm just guessing right now, but they're probably filming the opening part all right now, or what we're seeing is just the filming of the opening stuff. And Indy, when he's older, he has those dots on his face. So we know that it's not really him older. It really is, the Indiana Jones from 1989. Dale says, I'm not afraid of spoilers. I'm not the kind of person that takes them out of context. When I see them play out, I'll make up my mind whether they were good or not. Tross was good, in my opinion. Yeah. Yeah, that's what's always important to remember. That's what's always like back in the day, like, for the prequels, man, you'd see stuff from like Ain't It Cool News, who's like covering like midi-chlorians, right? And I don't have any, like, I'm not throwing any shade on any of that, like how they reported or whatever. They just reported it what they thought, how they heard it. And with that, I think came like a lot of baggage. And that's always been like like where people took what midi-chlorians meant out of context, potentially, and they were like really ran with it, or balance of the force, that what it meant. And what's kind of crazy is, like, I don't think George Lucas meant like what Ain't It Cool News said back then, or what they were thinking it meant. But then it feels like Rian Johnson thought it meant that too, you know, and it was like the George Lucas way of, like, for balance of the force was simply like it's like a body. A healthy body has no cancer. If there's a cancer, the body's not balanced. And in the Star Wars films, his six, that was the Sith. And so you had this just big story where there was kind of at time balance, then it was thrown out of whack, and then Anakin had to fix it, and he took the hard road. That's kind of that's just how things play out. So where I'm going with this is that with spoilers, whenever I would report things, oftentimes I would try and leave out any kind of commentary until the end, or just boldly state this is what I know. And then I would just get so much hate, like, because I didn't, like, write this long article that was eloquently diving into what it means exactly. And I always thought I knew what things meant exactly, and I think usually I did for the most part, but I never wanted to be so arrogant as to believe I did. And so it was always like, hey, like, here's this idea, play with it in your head, digest it, sleep on it, and then, accept it, and then see how it plays out on screen. And that actually helps me a lot. It helps me a lot whenever I know what to expect, and then I see it play out masterfully, well done by a competent filmmaker. That's much better than what I had in my head most often. So it's like, that's where I kind of, I guess, deviate from some people, or the perspective that everything's supposed to be this, like, secret surprise. Now, Dale says that, The Rise of Skywalker was good in his opinion. And I really feel like the majority of that movie was good. I really feel like when I take the pieces of it, if I just, like, put it on and watch 5 minutes of it, I'll like it. I'll like every part of it. It's probably my least favorite Star Wars movie, but it's like, which one of your kids do you love the most? Not to say that the Star Wars movies are my kids, but I love it that much more. It's like Star Wars is up here and everything else is so down here. Even being at the bottom of that is not really, that bad of a place to be on my ranking of thousands of movies I've seen throughout my life. I really love a lot of what happened in that movie. There's just things about it, and maybe it's because of the spoilers I was getting during the production, like Jannah, that was Lando's daughter, and then it just wasn't. And they built so much of the movie around that idea, and then they chickened out on it. And Finn was supposed to be in love with Rey. He was going to profess his love to her. And when you watch the movie, though, like, and the fact that they got rid of that is fine with me. Like, I'm okay with that if they just changed direction. But as they're about to go down into the sandworms, or about, the Ochi's little pit thing as they're about to fall into it. He's like, Ray, I have something to tell you. And like, what was he going to say in the final edit? Oh, I have the Force. She'd be like, oh, thanks, asshole. Like, what does that matter now? Are you going to levitate us out of here? Because he had no reason to say that. That shouldn't have been left in the movie at all. Like, it should have been removed. So there's like things about it that, like, I wouldn't say they infuriate me, because that takes it to like so much more of a serious level, you know, than it really is. But it's like, you know, they elevated Jannah, got rid of Rose, moved Rose over, and used that Leia excuse, which I don't buy. I kind of think that it, like, in my opinion, I don't think that Abrams was super brave on that one. One of the things, like, I don't know if this rumor is true. I believe it to be true. But when Trevorrow was exiting that film, I was told that Ryan was coming back, and it made sense. And he did exit the film, for the record. So the person who told me he was that they were getting the kibosh also told me that was happening. But then I was told that Michelle Rejuan did some fast moves, and I don't mean that like in a bad way, but like did some, you know, fast thinking, and got Abrams back. And that one of the stipulations of having Abrams back was, yeah, you could have it, but it has to come out on December 19th or whatever it was. And so that was what happened. And I think he needed more time. I think that the movie would have been better. Also, though, you look at COVID, you're like, God, thank God it came out when it did, because if it hadn't, we might not, who knows when it would have been finished, and who knows what it could have happened to it. But yeah, so like I like it, though. You know what I mean? Like I said, I love it. In fact, it's just like I feel about that one how a lot of people feel about Attack of the Clones. Side note, speaking of Attack of the Clones, I've had enough like interactions with people at Lucasfilm over the years to know for pretty much a fact that George Lucas was super disappointed in Attack of the Clones. He felt that was the one where he dropped the ball. He didn't feel it was Phantom Menace. He felt that was where he messed up. And I think in the end, that trilogy's better for it, because I think with Revenge of the Sith, he had some fire in his belly. And that's probably my favorite Star Wars movie now. You know, let's see what Mark says. Now that the sequel trilogy is over, and have you ever thought about reporting on the stuff we don't know? I always felt like there was a ton of behind the scenes stuff you knew but never talked about. Yeah, I just kind of did a little bit, I think. Maybe. I don't know if I ever talked about that or not. It's kind of like all a big blur. What's hard about that is that what didn't come true, or what didn't end up on screen, it's really hard to say. Hold on, my dog needs that. All right, sucker. There you go. Anyways, back. He needed, or I needed to know what actually was shot or what was finished. And a lot of times I would report stuff like Kylo Ren going into the Millennium Falcon and in Force Awakens, and like, you know, being sad as he looks at the cockpit. Like, I reported that, got a lot of shit about it when the movie came out for no reason. It was just people who wanted to hate, you know, who wanted to kick me when I was up, I guess. And but then like the cutscenes come out, and then you have all that stuff show up. I think it's pretty telling that you don't have any cutscenes for Rise of Skywalker, because I think that it would show how much the stuff was waffled on, like Palpatine's origins and stuff like that. And you know, like I think that they went for the less brave approach on that one. They went with making things more. They went with ambiguity, and I don't believe in ambiguity in the final chapter of a saga. You know, I think that's the time that you can't play that card anymore. I think that's when you have to be pretty bold. And so, you know, I feel like that when you get down to it, the sequel trilogy, for being a corporately made Star Wars trilogy, pretty much without George Lucas, thank God it ended up how it did. You know, and I don't want to crap on other franchises that people love, but let's just say there's been like movies this year that people were just elated to see. They just could not wait. And it took me 3 or 4 sittings just to get through the freaking movie. And it just wasn't for me. And that was really like that could have happened with these Star Wars films because they are a different beast than the George Lucas films. Every Star Wars trilogy is different. And in a lot of ways, I think we're kind of lucky for that because like when you watch the original trilogy, there's just this 70s and 80s thing that you can never really get back. And then when you watch the prequels, that George Lucas insanity, those choices that no one would ever will ever make those choices, and if they tried to, the corporation would stop them. So we got really well acted for the most part movies, and I think they sit on the shelf fine. They sit on the shelf well, and for a lot of people, they might even be their favorites in that. And I think that says a lot. But it really like how many Star Wars knockoffs do we really celebrate or do we like really love? And how many like genre movies actually like stand the test of even a few years? And here we are, and I think people generally like, consider Force Awakens. I think the big knock on it is that it was a remake of A New Hope with some new spins, but it is competent and it had what we love in Star Wars in it. So they made it work. And in the strangest way, I feel like right now we're on the true precipice of what is Star Wars actually going to be under Disney. I think so far everything's been fun. It's been easy. When I say easy, I don't mean like as it was a pipe dream, just this easy thing, a cakewalk. I mean that. Oh, you want a Han Solo movie? Okay. You want Boba Fett in a show, and okay. You want to do a Kenobi? Okay. Like oh, you want 7, 8, 9? Okay. Like it's all very much like what would we have ordered if Star Wars was a restaurant? Those are the things. And like some of these things, though, I think like the Rogue Squadron movie, that is, it seems like to fans like it's just an easy home run. I don't think it is. I think it's going to be the hardest movie for them to sell that they've ever tried to sell. Personally, I don't think that you have your average person walking around, with this nostalgia for Rogue Squadron novels. And I don't even know if most people even know what Rogue Squadron is. Like how most people didn't know what Mandalorian was. They made it work. And it looks like Boba Fett, like the design is cool. But a fighter pilot show, I don't see that genre either is really rocking. Like when Top Gun 2 comes out, I don't know what to expect. I don't know if people really get into that stuff. You know what I mean? I don't know if they really I don't think that's like an easy sell. That's just where I'm going with this. And so I hope it works out. And I think it will be a good movie. I do. I like where Patty Jenkins is coming from on that one. And I think that the idea that, her father was a fighter pilot and that she has all these connections to those people, I think it's gonna give it some gravitas that it wouldn't have otherwise. But that's the one where I'm like, I hope they could sell this one easily. I hope they could make it work, because the Solo situation, that wasn't because Han Solo was bad. That was because it was 5 months after Last Jedi. It had nothing to do with how good Last Jedi was either. It had to do with how close it was. Like literally, people would ask me, "There's another Star Wars movie out?" Like they thought it was down the road. They expected it to come at Christmas. And so here we are now in 2021, and Kenobi is coming, and sorry guys, I'm really bad at this chat thing at the moment because I keep ignoring it because I'm not used to looking at it. But what's my opinion of the Kenobi series? So excuse me, like I said, I had a cold this week. The Kenobi series is, from what I understand, like a couple of things I think that are probably important to throw out there is if they're filming something with the volume, it's not going to be super fast paced. it's going to be at the it's going to be like a space western, a western film. And for Mandalorian, that worked really, really well. But from what I understand, like a lot of that really fast, like a lot of the fast motion stuff, it's not really something that you can do with the volume. So I would expect it to be about the pace of the Mandalorian, very similar in that way. And I would also expect it to probably be a little bit more dreary. And when they do the exteriors, that's where we might see like the fast motion kind of stuff. And I saw some photos of Kenobi without the robe, with the under tunic on. So it looks like they're kind of like doing kind of like a little bit of a piecemeal kind of costume. I'm not sure if he'll wear the robe or not 100% because I didn't see it. So I can't tell you if that's where they're going with it. But you know what is interesting is that there was a Liam Neeson interview a few days ago, and sorry, I said I didn't plan to do this. I just did this on a whim, but where he said that Disney couldn't afford him, like kind of like joking around, and that he wouldn't be in the Kenobi show for that reason. And number one, he's clearly joking. Like that is a joke. He's kidding around, and they got him on the Clone Wars television show. Like if they could get him for a cartoon, they're going to be able to get him for the Kenobi show. And I had reason to believe that he would be involved in it. So not sure what to make of that, not making an article on it. It was like when it was brought up to me, it was in passing. We were talking about something more important at the time, and it was like, oh, cool. All right, nice, but who knows? Maybe plans change. Maybe they're holding it back. But it's also going to be like it's supposed to be what the film was. It's the film that was, from what I understand, at first it was going to be cut into six drafts of a script, or six scripts, two for each act. And there was a Collider rumor. I think that there was only 4 episodes. And it went through so many rewrites that it's like really hard to like throw down the gauntlet on that. So it's 6 episodes, but I would not be surprised if it was still 6 personally, because I think people want it really badly. And I know that the content is there because there was a 2.5-hour movie written for it. So, so let's see. So anyways, so my opinion of the Kenobi show is I think it's going to be really good. I really do. I think it's going to be good. I don't think Ewan McGregor would run back to it if it was bad. I think that he's a producer on it, which is, you give an actor with some kind of like lineage, a producing credit, like it could be kind of a junk credit. But to me, it says he's really involved with it being right. And that makes me think that it won't be anything too batshit about it. Like, I mean, he's the guy who, I love the title of Attack of the Clones, but he's the guy when they announced the title Attack of the Clones, was like, what? You can see that. I think you can see that on YouTube probably. And so I think it's going to be cool, but I don't know if I don't have anything like really, really deep to say about it. I don't really, I don't know why it needs to exist yet. And that's always kind of like one of my guiding research questions when I'm digging into a movie. Why does this need to exist? Because I could be excited at the prospect. I'm excited about the prospect of seeing Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, as I am Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. But we don't know why either of those movies needs to exist yet. Why that series or that movie. And I want to know. I hope to know. But right now, it just kind of doesn't look like it's leaving Tatooine too much. I was down there at the exterior set where they film, and there's been a lot of stuff out there recently, like Jawas and Banthas and Tatooine speeders. They keep just kind of taking the same couple of sets and shuffling them around, and like the same setup has been there for quite a while. And most of the Mandalorian stuff for the old planets has been either removed from the area or put like in the back. So it's pretty much Kenobi all the time there. And I haven't seen any evidence of anything outside of Tatooine. And you could justify that. Like the idea that he never leaves Tatooine makes it easier for some fans who just assume he never left. But I also think that in 20 years of space adventure, I mean, that's what, 3, 6, 9, 12, what, 15, 18, 21. We basically have like that many, that's how many eras, episodes of the Clone Wars you can do, how many series of the Clone Wars you could do. Clone Wars was 3 years. Look at how long he's there. You're gonna tell me he never left for like a day on an adventure? That Luke was always in imminent danger? Because we know he wasn't. He was out flying T-16s, being a jackass, killing innocent animals like a psychopath. He was doing it all the time, shooting womp rats. So I would be happy if he did leave. And I also, I mean, I don't know about you guys. I'm cynical enough though. I don't know. Is it cynical? Well, maybe it's cynical. I don't know. I just think that this is supposed to be a limited series. It's supposed to be a one-off. But if it connects, they're gonna make another one. They'll like do more, and maybe in this first one he doesn't leave. So let's see. What's Mark asking? Do you think Lucasfilm will ever do anything with the unused Lucas stories of his vision of the sequel trilogy? Yeah, that's a good question. Because if they do and they admit it, then it just opens up everybody to second guess what they're trying to legitimize. There's like a saying in music, and I've heard it often throughout the years, and that's that repetition legitimizes. And I think that's true of anything, even lies. You'll see that a lot. And so when you repetitiously see Ray and Ben Solo and or Kylo Ren and all those guys doing things, it legitimizes it. The more that it happens, it becomes more of a mainstay. I think if you go and you throw down those alternate possibilities at any time soon and let it be known that those were alternate possibilities, I think that's when people go, "Oh God, it should have been this." And it opens up an avenue to dislike it. So it's not in their best interest to do so and admit it. Now, with that in mind, what is kind of interesting about it, and this wouldn't surprise me, with like the various things that have come out over the years and that we've heard, like with like Lucas wanted it to be more about their grandchildren, right? What if they end up using that stuff as the basis for the next trilogy? Ray's, instead of it being Luke Skywalker, what if they just take all of that structure and put it onto the next trilogy? Take it from Luke, put it on Ray, like that kind of thing. It's completely possible. And but then again, I could also, I have this wild theory right now about Bad Batch, and that's that Omega is some kind of unaltered special clone. She probably, I don't know if they made her female on purpose or if she was just so unaltered that it like, or obviously she's a clone, but they make them from embryos, she came out female. What if not having any of those markers that they were messing with, what if she can use the Force? That's always been one of the things, is that clones can't use the Force because of their genetic manipulation. They're just closed off from it. And it's a way of making it so that way you can't clone Luke and Darth Vader and everybody all the time and make the whole franchise suck. But what if she can use the Force? What if it moves that way? And when you look at Omega, she looks like Luke Skywalker from the Ralph McQuarrie art when Luke was a girl. And then she also looks like the short-haired Princess Leia, who is also with the Star Killer character in that art. So she mentions not liking being hooked up to machines and all that kind of stuff. So what if she ends up with Grogu being part of Luke Skywalker's next Jedi Academy, or Jedi Temple, whatever they're going to call it. You know what I mean? Like this might be we might be kind of getting characters peppered around who become part of that whole story. And that's also another, like almost 20 to 30 years worth of storytelling where that can exist and not be destroyed by Kylo Ren until the very end. And so there's like so much story opportunity with Star Wars and with long periods of time, especially, that I'm curious to see where this goes, because the last the last few Star Wars shows have mattered here and there, and there's been a lot that doesn't matter, which is fine. It's how it goes. 'Cause the cartoons, but I feel like Omega is a really good opportunity for them to create a character with longevity. And unlike a lot of the characters, there's a lot that I liked. Oh, the police are here to get me. There's a lot that I liked about Star Wars Rebels. Ezra would go from being a really great hero to me, and then to being kind of annoying. And I'm not a person who just like hates when they use like a young character and it annoys me. Like when they're like, constantly blushing, like because like a girl waved to them and stuff. It kind of like gets a little bit dumb. It's like you don't understand kids really. They're really not that dumb. It's kind of condescending in a way. And so that kind of stuff annoys me. But they haven't done that at all with her, with Omega. So far, I think Omega feels like as like a starting character, super strong. And obviously will probably only get better as they build her up and improve her. So would be kind of cool though if we ended up with this clone of Boba Fett or Jango Fett who becomes a Jedi, and I've also wondered if she's Omega, does that make Boba Alpha? I don't know, if that's how it goes or not. But anyways, somebody asked, I saw it and I meant to get to it. Where was it? The chat moves too fast for my dumb eyes. Somebody asked, is George Lucas coming back? Sorry, I can't find it at the moment. But the answer to if you ask my opinion is absolutely not. George Lucas, if he ever intended to do anything else with Star Wars that mattered to him, he would not have sold it. George Lucas never directed a movie for hire for a studio in his life. He directed movies that he wanted to have made that he pretty much owned. And he didn't really own Star Wars, but he had to do some fast stuff. He's not going to roll back. He's not going to. It would be like it's like you're not going to be the CEO of your company and then go back and work on the floor. It's just not going to happen like that. And I don't think he wants to. And I don't think it's about ego, but I don't think his ego would let him do that either. I think if he wanted to make movies, he would be making those personal movies he promised us that he's never going to make. And I believe those rumors. I don't really know where they come from or who starts them or how they get started. But if you want my opinion, and this is just conjecture, they are started to divide fans to make them angry, because if you make people angry, you could bring them onto your side and you could get that mob with you. And then you could, create an us against them mentality that people check back in on. And the idea that George Lucas and Kathleen Kennedy aren't cool is ridiculous. And I also think it's even more ridiculous that an 80-year-old George Lucas is going to be like, you know what, I'm going to go film Star Wars. He's not Harrison Ford. You could say Harrison Ford's playing Indy. He's not Harrison Ford. You know what I mean? He's eating at the Chinese buffet at the mall. Remember that picture? With that said, like I think he deserves his break. I think he's done what he wanted to do with Star Wars. I think making 6 of them is good enough. And some people might say that was good enough in general, just for the whole franchise. But nobody wants that really, and we want more. And he's done. He didn't want to make it. If he wanted to make 7, he would have done it, and he wouldn't have sold it. So it's a ridiculous idea. And I also find it extra ridiculous in that the hate put towards the sequel trilogy or new Star Wars content for that matter at all still doesn't really feel as bad as it was towards the prequels. If George Lucas was making Star Wars today, I think the same people who are saying Lucas is coming back would be saying he was ruining it. I mean, that's just the truth. And so I would think if anything was to ever happen, and this is conjecture, and this is me dreaming, maybe George Lucas one day is, in his jacuzzi drinking his beer. He has a vintage case of tequila. Do they still make that tequila? He has a vintage case of tequila that hasn't gone skunk, that he's had held in a chamber with his UFO that he could use to escape the world in 2012. And he's like, you know what? I have this idea, man. This would be a cool Star Wars movie. And he gets on the phone and he says, hey, Kathleen Kennedy, got this idea. Check it out. Go make that. And she's like, that's not a bad idea, George. And then they make it. That's what I would say would be. I think he might deliver a premise at most. I don't think he will. That was the most I would expect. And I know that he's visited most of the films. He's given advice. He's given his ideas on what he thinks or about, how things work to people making new stuff. He comes from a filmmaking community up north that is really about peer review, a lot about camaraderie. When he started Skywalker Ranch, a lot of it was to give office space to filmmakers that were his friends. A part of him was embarrassed by his good luck and fortune, and he wanted to give something back. And a lot of those filmmakers either just received a place to write for free or at a very, very good price and comfort. That's where he's at. So when somebody goes to make a Star Wars property today, and I think if he thinks that they seem cool or they're a young filmmaker, he seems to be cool to talk to them. And it doesn't seem to just be about PR, because they seem to kind of hold it back for the most part. So yeah, man, it would be, I would love to have more George Lucas Star Wars. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I would take that in a heartbeat. I love the prequel films. I think they're batshit insane, but no one can make those. We'll never get them again, And so I think that it's just important that we appreciate those 6 Star Wars films, more than anything. So what is it? What is Delta? A little Palpy was always going to come back in the EU one way or another. Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, it's like too easy of a grab, and he was such the big baddie in that series or in the Skywalker saga that you really couldn't leave him alone. And one of my and this is just me being in my head now, but when you only had 6 Star Wars films, right? And you would watch Revenge of the Sith, you'd hit that moment where Anakin is going to turn to the dark side. And then he's Darth Vader. He's not in the suit. He just goes to the Jedi Temple. He is fucking shit up. He's just tearing it up, right? He's killing kids. He doesn't care. He's Darth Vader, unlimited power. A Sith Lord, the chosen one. The model of what you would want in a Sith Lord if you were one, as an apprentice who was one day going to murder you. It would be an honor to be murdered by Anakin Skywalker, right? Then Obi-Wan Kenobi kicks his ass and he ends up in that Darth Vader suit. All that wasted potential, right? Well, I feel like Rian Johnson was maybe thinking that same thing, but for Kylo. And he set it up. I feel like the little T-ball stand he set up for episode 9 was that Kylo was now it. I thought he was the Supreme Chancellor. He was Emperor. And when he lays down the power, there is nowhere else for it to go. That's where I think he wanted to take it. And that's conjecture on my part. I heard things, but you never know what was accurate, stuff like that. But it made me think that's where it was going. And then when they brought back Palpatine, well, then it changed. It was the same idea, but now we have all these Sith cultists. That planet gets Exegol kind of gets messed up. But I mean, there's going to be stuff there. If they ever want to do another movie, archaeologists go to Exegol and they start digging. They find a Sith tome, and there we go. We're back at it. I don't think that they ever want the saga to end, though. I don't think that they want a saga without Jedi and Sith. And it would have been fascinating if the Jedi and the Sith had come to an end and it had become something new. You know what I mean? If they had become whatever, Skywalkers, as some people suggested, stuff like that. Like, it would have been neat. But they didn't do that. So I expect the Sith and the Jedi to be around forever. I don't expect episode 9 to be the end of the Skywalker saga. I just don't. I think it will be for a time. Maybe it is, as far as Kathleen Kennedy is concerned, as far as everybody on the payroll today, maybe. But it would not surprise me. And I also think that, I don't know, you always want to think that the government is prepared, and that corporations are prepared, and everybody has a great plan. And sometimes you're surprised to learn just that we're just kind of out here winging it all the time. But I would have to think that there would be ideas like, what happens if every Star Wars movie bombs in a row? What are we going to do? And I would have to think that the Skywalker saga coming back would be one of the obvious continuations. But I also don't think you can do it anytime soon. Like Spider-Man, that dude just gets rebooted and nobody seems to care. I kind of do. It kind of makes me not want to get involved. But the Star Wars ones are a little bit more serious because the canon is taken so much more seriously. Like, comic book fans are so much more open to multiverse ideas, and Star Wars is not a multiverse in that way. Not really. As we can see, even there's friction with the expanded universe fans or legends, as they call it now. And it doesn't really go over that easily. So I think that they're going to have to wait a long time, a good 10 years. But 10 years goes by pretty fast. And when you look at where we're at, we've pretty much already had 10 years of Disney for the most part now. They got it in 2012, and here we are in 2021. So we're almost there, So, let me see. I keep picking Dave. Sorry, Dave. Or I guess you're welcome, Dave. Sorry, everyone else. Do you think Snoke's ring was an actual clue of Palpatine being involved in Snoke? I don't. I think that everything was just so spiritually derivative in a lot of ways. And I remember that ring, and I remember because man, for the Last Jedi, I saw lots of that movie in rough versions, not the whole movie at one time, but whole scenes and stuff. And I saw them using the Snoke stuff in such a way that it was oh, try it this way, and they would try it a different way. And once they would get that Palpatine vibe going, then they would go with it. Another one that I had sent to me. This one was sent to me. It was when Rey and Luke Skywalker are training in The Last Jedi, and she gets mad, and he falls down. They filmed that actually in Black Park, where they're filming Cassian right now. They filmed it outside at night, and I had that footage there too. But it's one of those things. Anyways, to go back to the question of Snoke, I don't think there was actually a plan to make Palpatine and Snoke the same person. And I think if there had been, it would have been even clearer on screen how that worked or why it worked that way. And I think that honestly, killing Snoke in that moment was the bravest thing. I was so happy about what it could have meant. Because it would have just been a new area, like a new place for the whole trilogy to go. And, we're armchairing it now. So, there's no reason to get upset about that or whatever. Just go, okay, now that's what it is. It just simply is what it is. They did handoffs on it, and the creatives took it that way. So it is what it is now. And I like Palpatine coming back. I was always fine with it. Would have been fine with him having been in 7, in fact. I just wanted to know how it happened. I just wanted a good explanation, a good reason why. I mean, if they had exorcist it. Is that a word? Exorcisted? and, and had it where, you know, the spirit was in Luke and then jumped to Kylo and he was wrestling with it and Luke couldn't save him or whatever. Like, I would have been fine with something, anything. But the way it went felt left field. It kind of felt like, of course it's Palpatine. Like, there's a part of me when I watch all of them together where I'm like, of course it was Palpatine. And so that's the part that just works because you've seen him screwing with things in the background so much, you know. Palpy was always going to come. Oh yeah, I already did that one. Let's see. Uriel says, for me, the worst Star Wars film is The Force Awakens because the similarities with A New Hope. Yeah, I can agree with it not really breaking too much new ground. I mean, the place that it excels is in the characters itself, you know, and Rey and Finn and Poe really break out. They really are super endearing, super likable, and it was easy to become attached to them, and that I don't think is easy. And so I do give that movie credit for that. I think that if it did the most reactionary thing that movie did was investing in character and in that way, because after the prequels were more plot and character was like more obvious and secondary. Character really came up to the front, but it was sort of hung on this A New Hope Christmas tree. So I don't disagree. I could see how you could think that it's like the worst one, you know. I definitely excuse me. I definitely don't hate any of them though. You know, I enjoy them all. And there's like times when like I'll critique something in Star Wars and then I'll watch it again. I'll be like, you know what? That's really good. You know what I'm like that on is Back to the Future Part 3. I will watch Back to the Future Part 3 and have the best time. And then I will in my head would be like, Back to the Future 3 is great. I'll put it on. It will almost break my heart. And then I'll be like, oh, it's not good. You just had a good viewing. It's not good. So then I build it down. Then I watch it again. I'm like, I love this movie. I kind of ping pong back and forth on a movie like that. And the Star Wars movies are all like that to me in little various micro transactional ways, you know? See, Buckshot says, could you pretty please go and break Mike Zero's computer and phone so he can never post another video? Hey, at this point, I'm like, you know, like there's a person I'm friends with who I follow on Twitter. I don't want to say they are. And I'm not really judge them for it. I just kind of don't understand. But they will retweet and share obvious just bullshit. Mike Zero level trash. And I don't ever understand like where it comes from, or why. And I'm like, well, you know, like it's fun for me now. It makes and so like there's a part of me where it's just like, you know, I just wish Mike Zero would just be like, this is speculation. If he did that, he would have the best speculation channel on YouTube, and it would be easy to go like, yeah, it's just Mike Zero speculating. You know, it would be cool, but instead he co-ops and takes stuff and then passes it off as truth, and that's just a big fat lie at that point. And that is the difference, you know. And it's even cool to speculate educationally, you know, like, hey, I'm going to tell you why I think this is going to happen because of the story structure or because of what we know based off of the past. Like, kind of would be fine, but yeah, I just hope someday it comes out he's this Andy Kaufman character, because if he is, I can respect. You know what I mean? All the respect in the world. But he made a lot of he used to make phony accounts and post shit at me and my ex. And then he would forget to change the accounts and we would get the email that would show it was Mike Zero, and then he would delete it. And it's just like, man, why do you gotta be that way? You know, I'm like to the point in all of this stuff though, where nothing enrages me anymore. You know, I'm not mad at people for believing bullshit. The people who pass it around, I don't understand. I just don't. Like, to me, like the actual like truth matters. It's like I, it just I don't understand how somebody is okay with going like, I'm gonna set expectations. Like, I guess to me, maybe spoilers in a way are always about setting expectations. And I think setting expectations is really important. And it's really, really important to have them in check always, but also to like kind of like prepare yourself for what you're gonna get. And like, hey, it's really cool when Luke Skywalker pulls down a Star Destroyer with this mine but that kind of shit doesn't really like that epic kind of like stuff that it feels like it just on itself. It doesn't really fit into a story usually. And it's just I don't know, it just doesn't really feel like it feels really slow and not really with the kinetic pace of Star Wars to me. That's pretty cool, I guess, when it happens in Force Unleashed. But yes, Boba Omega is the last letter of the Greek alphabet. So here we go. So see, a Sith stoner. He says, "I don't believe it either." Just asking. Yeah, and that is fair. That is completely fair. I think so. They didn't use Lucas's stories, as he said, just as Hamill said. They are completely and totally different, as would be possible, save for the Barrissies for a few points. Yeah, and I agree with that. I really don't know like how in depth the George Lucas ideas were either, because like on one hand, if what we've heard is like the majority of it, it's a kind of becomes a big. Yeah, so you have this idea that's like lines, but you want someone to write novels from your lines. I could understand how they wouldn't want to do it. In a way, I don't blame them. It is George Lucas, and I would have to think if you don't take George Lucas's ideas, it's because you really don't think you can make them work, and you have something else that will work. And I think that's ultimately what happened. I think they would have loved to have taken his ideas. It would have been great to have his blessing across the board. It would have been great to have him helping with the press and not being called white slavers. But it didn't go that way for them. And that is the one thing, though, even when the Lucasfilm's choices piss me off, the thing I would say that I give credit to is like Kathleen Kennedy will make tough calls. They don't want to fire the Lego guys off of Han Solo, but if the movie they thought was getting fucked up, she made the tough call. I mean, she pretty much had to at one point not use George Lucas's ideas. They had to go forward with that, and that is not an easy call, to make. And I really, really, think that those ideas will one day be the germ of something, though. I do. I also think that those scripts from Underworld will too, and probably already have been used to some extent. Like we saw the Pikes emerge in Clone Wars that were from Star Wars Underworld, and then we saw them kind of in sort of a featured role in Solo: A Star Wars Story. And I think as that part of the universe gets explored more, that stuff will probably come out more. So yeah, I think George Lucas's micro ideas will be peppered throughout the whole thing. As Kathleen Kennedy, I think, called it to slash film. I want to say she called it a gold mine. So I would expect that it goes that way. Mark McGaw, hey Mark. Lucas goes into his ideas for the sequel trilogy in the prequel archives book. Expensive book, but a good read. Yeah, I don't actually own that book yet. So there's probably stuff that I am missing from it. And we also need to remember that from the sound of things, there was going to be a game of telephone either way, where Lucas had his ideas, and then those were going to another writer, the Little Miss Sunshine writer, and then those were going to be, and then moved on to the filmmaker, to J.J. Abrams in that instance. So it would have, I don't think his ideas would have survived intact in a really deep way, almost either way you cut it. His theme, see, there's that quote where it talks about it going into the micro world. Does it go into any more of that stuff into the, does the archives book go into the his idea of like a micro universe, was that George Lucas thematically speaking, or was it George Lucas literally speaking? Like, were they going to go into a little tiny planet? Were they going to get shrunk down? Was it going to be Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in Space? I've heard it explained both ways, and that way sounds kind of batshit to me. And I don't really buy it, but the idea to me just sounds like a bigger exploration of the midi-chlorians concept, and maybe an idea that like maybe even out of anger that people took it wrong and not the right way, and so in such a direction that he wanted to even explore it deeper. Because that idea, like the way that he uses it in Phantom Menace, the theme is symbiosis, and everybody is symbiotic to everybody. Everything is in twos. The real queen and the fake queen, the Sith and the Jedi, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, like all that stuff. And then it kind of like everybody, and especially with Naboo and the Gungan, or what are they called? The Theed Palace people, the Nabooians and the Gungans, like everything was that. And then that symbiosis is threatened by that cancerous Sith. All of that stuff with balance and midi-chlorians all interconnects really well. It's done really, the themes are strong, I think. But it kind of like, I think it gets overlooked because people are looking for the most easy and most obvious like jab, and they don't read deeper. Jar Jar makes me mad or whatever. Just such a to me. I loved Jar Jar, and I still love Jar Jar. Don't get me wrong. The one thing about Jar Jar though that I was always disappointed was that how they just kind of let him go from that trilogy. When I watch Phantom Menace today, it's like you watch it and you're like, I dig him. He's weird, a little annoying sometimes, sure. 3PO's a little annoying sometimes too, but Jar Jar, I liked him, and then I just feel like they should have saw him through. They just should have said screw it and put him in episode 3 in a more important role. Like he should have been. There was always this assumption that he was the one who was going to save the twins or be a big part of that. And with his connection to Padme and stuff like that, it made sense, But let's see. That doesn't mean the director has to direct all 3 movies. Direct the first one and write and oversee the other 2. The relayed director approach was pretty doomed from the start. Yeah, I mean, I think that it was like when you went with the writer director approach on Force Awakens, clearly at that point, Abrams should have stayed aboard. But at the same time, when Ryan came aboard as writer director, his choices that he was making, they weren't a secret to Abrams. He was there writing that while he was making The Force Awakens. Like they knew what one another was doing. I feel, and this is mostly speculation on my part or conjecture, but I feel like Abrams saw the pushback, and he saw, oh, you know what? I don't know what to do with Rose. So if I just do nothing, maybe that part of the internet will like me. That's how it reads to me. And maybe that's not fair. I don't know. Do you guys think that's fair? I mean, but that's how it really feels to me. That's how it seems to play out. And I also feel like if Abrams was going to feel that strongly about anything in the world, it should have been literally set up in The Force Awakens. If he had anything that he wanted to definitely happen, but he wanted to be ambiguous. And it wasn't necessarily always, I think, to preserve the mystery of the story as it unfolded, the mystery box. I think it was sometimes because if you make her Han's daughter, then now you've committed, and now people won't like you. If you don't say anything, you don't get any shit for it. So leave it open. And obviously, my take from it is that I think The Last Jedi is actually the best of that trilogy, and I think Rian Johnson did the best and their bravest work. But I also now today go, I don't know if it matters, because the brave choices that were made, I don't know if they actually necessarily work as well in the context of the trilogy that we have. And I'm still processing this, honestly. Like, I'm not definite one way or another. So, I could still be persuaded one way or the other on these things. I haven't hit that moment with the Rise of Skywalker yet where I'm like, God, I missed that movie and I want to watch it right now. And I know it'll happen because, like I said, Back to the Future 3 happens to me all the time. So I think that it's going to happen, and I'm curious how I feel about it when that time comes. I will say I saw The Rise of Skywalker with my kids a bunch of times. My kids loved it. My kids like every choice. They don't second guess things. Their 7 and 6-year-old brains aren't working at the level where they have these high expectations yet. And so with all of that in mind, they loved it. They wanted to see it. I saw it more times than I would have because of them. And in a weird way, I think they made me like that movie a lot more than I would have. I wouldn't say one would have been better than the other. George Lucas's treatments would have been torn apart by the same people that tear this. Yeah, see, I agree with that too. If you make hating something your personality, you're not going to magically like it because George Lucas did it. And I love George Lucas, but let's just be completely real about competency as a writer. He's not as competent of a writer as Abrams and Kasdan. Kasdan was his writer for the most part. And he's not as competent of a writer as Rian Johnson. In fact, I would say that anything that George Lucas did was almost always made better through that communal aspect of that Northern Californian vibe. I'm telling you, it's peer review, man. They help each other out, and it helped George Lucas out a lot. And that's not a knock, because writing is a solitary activity at first, but then it's not until you start working with other people and making it into a movie. And George Lucas was a genius. So I'm not knocking him at all on that route. I mean, he would say the same thing about himself. I think he's pretty objective about himself as a writer. He knows. But he also knows, like, when I want something done my way, I'm just going to do it my way. And I respect that. And that's why in the things in the prequel trilogy that I don't really care for, I still have a big respect for. And also where at the same time with episode 9, some of the stuff I don't have that big of a respect for it, because I don't feel like that George Lucas spirit was there with Abrams. I feel like it was, let's say, as little as we have to. I'm afraid. That's how I feel about it. And knowing knowing what was changing in editorial with some pretty good sources at the time, there was a lot of waffling, So yeah, nobody's saying anything's perfect. Abrams had no say in The Last Jedi, which was very clear from the start. Abrams' Luke was connected to the Force, but the floating rock scene was cut. I suspect Snoke and Plagueis and Rey was a Skywalker or Solo. So I will say, back during the earliest part of The Force Awakens, when I got the first dump of concept art sent to me, there was too many things in that concept art to make me believe that Kira, as she was named at the time, was not intended to be a Solo. There was artwork of her standing next to Han, not Chewbacca, not Luke Skywalker, not Finn and Poe, but Han Solo. There was art of her with the DL-44. Like, all of this stuff felt very much in the spirit. Now you could always chalk it up to the Blue Sky artist work. The artist was assuming this. The artist wanted her to be Han's daughter. The artist had an agenda, which they kind of do, and they're like design, like they'll give a little nudges to the creatives, and in their with their creativity. But there was so much, and also Maz Kanata and the Force too. That was another thing that really changed. That really bummed me out. Was they cut the scene from The Force Awakens where she, blasts the stormtroopers away using the Force. And the idea was that she was this rogue Jedi type who never agreed with Jedi doctrine and just went her own way. And you could kind of see where it could still go, because I don't think she died. She lived, right? Yeah, she lived. And so it's like, you could have her actually picking that up in the future. but that's where I thought it was going to go. And I think that all changed once Ryan decided to make Luke the mentor. But the idea, I could be wrong about this, but I believe Luke Skywalker being in exile was a Rain Roberts idea. That was an idea. I want to say I'm right about that, but don't quote me on that. But I believe Rain Roberts had the idea of Luke being in exile, and they picked it up, and then that really shaped how that trilogy shifted. And I think that's when Maz Kanata became less important. And then I think when Carrie Fisher passed away, that's when Maz Kanata had to come back and be more important, because her scene in the Last Jedi I also think is such a joke. And there were a few different reasons for that. And one of them at first was, I believe, scheduling with Lapita, who was doing other movies for Disney, but also like it was weird. Like why wasn't she at the casino in Canto Bight? Like why wasn't she meeting them there as the intermediary to introduce them to the Plum Bloom man? All of that stuff would have made sense. But I think there was like logistical problems and stuff that got in the way. Ben, any leads on Sam Jackson's Mace Windu returning? Dude, I wish, man. I really like. God, I had a heads up on Luke Skywalker being in the Mandalorian, but it was like, do you want to know? And it was like 2 days before, and I was like, you know what? I thought it was gonna be Mace, and I was like, what did they say? Oh, they just said, I'll say one thing, they're all black. I was like, oh, well, it's Mace Windu. He's a black guy. But they meant Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker. And I didn't. I was like, nah. I was like, I don't want to know. It comes out in 2 days, and I won't run something that close. There's no time to process it. There's no fun. That's just kind of like low hanging fruit. No, I won't do it. So I didn't learn it officially, and but I thought that was going to be Mace. In some ways, I kind of would have preferred it, not to second guess everything. I love the scene. I don't think it looked good. I think it played good. I think it was an excellent scene. I don't think that the visual effect was very good. I would rather they have got what's his name, Sebastian Stan. Like let's just do that. Let's just get Sebastian Stan to be Luke Skywalker already. I mean, he wants to do it. The fans want it. The people at Lucasfilm think it's cool. So it's like, where is that? But I would not be pissed off if Samuel L. Jackson came back, if Mace Windu showed up. The concept, when I say fan concept art of him with like the mechanical arm and stuff and the robot eye or whatever. Like, there's so many places you could take that. You could even use him in the Kabath idea. Not as a clone, but somebody who's been so injured that they've lost their sanity. And you could make him, a problem later on. There's just so many cool things that two cool ways I feel like they could take it. And no one ever gets pissed off when Samuel L. Jackson shows up. I watch Coming to America, and he robs the McDonald's or McDonald's, and I'm all about it. Like, I love Samuel L. Jackson. I don't care what he does or what he's in. Like, put him in it, bring him back. And his death, is his death important enough to Anakin's turn that it cheapens it if he's alive? Because I feel like the stab in the back is the same. So I want him back. I'm cool with it. I get why people are turn them apart, but I never agreed. Star Wars is for 12-year-olds. Yeah, that is one thing that is always true. Is that, see, when Star Wars works, it's for 12-year-olds, and it works for us old men and women and people. And when Star Wars doesn't work, it's for 12-year-olds and it's condescending to them at the same time. Like, oh no, how does this Mandalorian backpack work? Whoa! Like, that kind of shit is, to me, is just kind of stupid. Because like, when you guys ever see that Masters of the Universe documentary that's on Netflix? There's this part in it where they're talking about how they talk to psychologists and therapists. they were like, well, what mattered to kids? And to like a 4 or 5-year-old boy, I have the power. That's what mattered. That's what got us off. That's what when he used to hold that sword aloft and say those words, I was sold every day. And so you want to see competent young people, competent heroes for young people to interact with. And like that's what I like in Star Wars. And you're right, like the old serials, the Commander Cody, even the Sierra Madre Indiana Jones movie. It has some adult stuff in it, but it's still kind of like kind of like a rated PG kind of thing. And so I'm with you there. But there is definitely a way to do it and a way not to do it. And like I do not fault people who don't like Jar Jar Binks and say it's baby talk and it bothers them. It doesn't bother me, but I could see their point, If they had actually done Lucas's stories, it would have been better because it actually make more sense to his movies. Their sequel trilogy is completely disconnected from the saga. See, that right there is where I love all of the explanations for it. They're sort of like the neo-Nazi kind of reorganization of the old idea. And then it's like, well, what if Hitler had survived? And then, all of that stuff, it all makes sense. The whole Cold War, the galaxy being just so sick of war that they allow this bad thing to happen. We see that all the time in the real world. You know what I mean? We're seeing it. We see it all the time. And so I think that it actually makes sense, but they make you buy their comics and novels and encyclopedias, and they make you do all the work. And I kind of think that's bullshit. Why the resist? And that's the J.J. Abrams ambiguity card. It works on television. It worked for Lost. I love Lost. I even like the ending of Lost. And not that that's even his baby, but you know what I mean. Like there were certain things that his productions did that were proven to be successful and true. And but I don't like it in this instance. I think, yeah, if you're gonna pick up post Return of the Jedi, more explanations could have been given. We didn't need to stew on it. It could have been done, just in passing and very, quickly. But it does feel disconnected if you don't know the reasons. Once you know all the reasons, then it feels way more connected to me. And it's fine. But if we're a trilogy should stand by itself. You shouldn't have to read a comic book or a novel or anything else. You should be able just to get everything you need on that story from it. And then all of that other stuff should fill in things for fun and add depth for fun, not for necessity. And a lot of that stuff is if you want to understand the movies and not just be confused. God, if you don't read that Poe Dameron novel about like how he defects and stuff, it doesn't really make that much sense. It's like, what is going on? And then and then you get to episode 9 and he used to be a smuggler. He has a whole different backstory. And it's just like, oh man, it's that stuff does frustrate me. I have a feeling going forward we won't have as many problems, but in the places where there shouldn't, like to go back to Melshi from Rogue One, he dies like 3 different ways in the books, if I remember right. His death, it's like not super clear on screen, and then it happens like in the kids' book differently. It's nothing is really that canon in certain ways because until they do revised editions, it just is what it is. Jordan, I know he denied it, but do you know if Qui-Gon will be in the Kenobi series? Gonna be honest with you, Jordan, I thought he was in the series, and I had it on good authority. I didn't get anything backed up. I never got like when he filmed or if he had filmed yet or anything like that. So I didn't run a story on it. If I ever got anything, if I ever got that confirmation that made it legit enough that I'd put on the site, then I would do it. I would have run it. So him saying that makes me wonder if, because he's kidding, and if they take it out of context in that write up, but maybe he's not there, or maybe he's just going to be a disembodied voice, and they haven't brought him in or approached him yet, and they have time. So, but that said, that's where I'm at with it. So, I'm not trying to string you along or kick up any like, oh, it's happening, because I thought it was, but his words on that make me think now that it's not. And I don't just like usually hear one thing unless I have good reason. Sometimes I'll hear one thing just from one source, and it's like, there we go, and like it all makes sense and it interfaces with other things. I didn't get that here, and I didn't get enough on the periphery of that story to make me go like, I see where it's going, I see where it's at, and so I'm gonna throw down on it. So I wouldn't count it out yet, though. Just with what I heard, and I respect my source on it, but I'm not a trained journalist. I'm trained in ethnography, but the one thing that I just believe is that you get multiple sources, and if you have a source with empirical data, then you run it. If I have empirical data, there you go. But Ari's Rock says they'd have to maul him so that he was insane until after Return of the Jedi before returning. Yeah, exactly. Or they'd have to Luke Last Jedi him. Like, what if he did survive and he fled to Octu and was keeping it secret and defending it from anybody discovering it until Luke? You know what I mean? Like, I would be happy with that kind of story. But I heard he might come back in Boba Fett. Darth Maul in Boba Fett? Or I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't have anything concrete on Darth Maul, so nothing I can say there. Like, no more in the comics, he was on Skid Row until the Human Torch reawakened him. Yeah. Oh yeah, I see what you're saying about Mace. So, Red 5, what's up, dude? What's good? Well, right now the weather is really hot, super hot. But I just realized right now that I have been talking for an hour and 41 minutes, and I need to go and pick up my childrinos from the moms. And so I'm going to do that. But it was really fun hanging out with you guys today. If I overlooked any comments in here on accident, I totally apologize, because I am still getting used to this program. And next time I will do a better job at getting into that kind of stuff. And but it was fun talking about the news with you guys, and it was fun broadcasting onto youtube.com. So we will do it again, hopefully more regularly. Hopefully whenever there's something to talk about, we'll get on here and we'll do this. In the future, when I get a studio set up, I'll try to do it with videos, so I'm not like this picture. But for now, this is better than nothing, right? And I hope everybody is doing well, and that the last year hasn't been too hard on you guys, because it's been a bad year, that's for sure. A hard year. And so I hope everybody's got vaccinated and getting back into the swing of things and staying healthy, and that nothing really too awful happened to anybody in the last year, but if it did, I hope you're doing okay. And if you have any ideas for things that we could talk about on here, send me a DM on Twitter, and we'll try to get some ideas going and have some more chats. And yeah, and it was a good time. So remember, stay positive, celebrate what you love. Don't look towards the negative all the time. We don't have to do that, and enjoy the fact that there's a Kenobi show coming out, and a Rogue Squadron movie, and an Indiana Jones movie, and a Willow series. I'm really excited for Willow, by the way. And there's just so much stuff that we have to look forward to. And that's what's, I guess, important about being a fan. Being a fan is celebrating things that you love and just letting what you don't just go. Just let it fall aside by the wayside, and don't let it ruin your day. I'm a hypocrite. I've let that happen to me in a lot of different ways throughout the years, but I like to think I've grown a little bit, and I'm not gonna fall into those old traps, I hope. But all right, guys, have a good day, and I'll see you guys next time.